what's shown on the right here is basically where we are headed. We are headed in the direction of 3D printing. We're headed in the direction of artificial intelligence. We're headed in the direction of DNA sequencing, personalized medicine, robotics. And for that, based on the advances in computing and also networking, we are now going to usher in an era where all these technologies are going to interconnect. And the result is going to be a hyper-innovation phase wherein for India to do well in this era, we need to go and focus clearly on innovation. So the key question then is, how do we go about the next several years to decades to go and accomplish those objectives I talked about from an overall GDP standpoint? Some of the earlier speakers talked about removing some of the key barriers that have prevented India from becoming a manufacturing powerhouse. We all know about some of the regulatory hurdles around land acquisition, around enforcement of contracts, and the list goes on and on. But we also know that we made good progress with respect to resolving some of those hurdles. So that's the first step. And I think there's enough that's written out there. There's enough discussion that happened on that front today. So I'm not going to go deep into that. The second one is to really leverage our strengths. Again, as some of the speakers pointed out, we are at a unique point in history wherein there are some really strong tailwinds that are going to drive our growth in the coming years. One of the foremost of them being the demographics. The fact that we have a large, young workforce is a key. The fact that we are on an economic stable front from an overall foreign reserve standpoint, from a stock market standpoint, from where the overall optimism in the country is, we got to go and leverage these strengths and really focus on those sectors that we can apply our strengths to. This is a classic strategic planning activity wherein you take a look at the landscape, you look at your goals, and you look at your strengths and weaknesses, and you do careful planning around applying to those sectors your strengths to be able to go and deliver on the growth. The case that I want to make here is that we can certainly grow, and most of the economists around the world agree that India is best positioned now to grow. The key is, how do we go and accelerate that growth? How do we grow and drive nonlinear growth in this chart? And for that, what is really needed is India needs to invest in innovation. Given that we are entering the world of hyper-innovation, we cannot afford to not invest in innovation. To be able to go and accelerate this curve, we got to invest in not just technology, but also business models. That's going to be a key, and also culture. So with that, some of you would probably go and say, yeah, of course we've heard that we got to go and invest in innovation, but what is innovation? We all know that there is no playbook for innovation. There is no recipe for innovation. So how do we go and build a simple framework that allows us to go and define the roles that each one of us needs to play so as to go and realize that focus and that goal? So before I go to the next slide, I want to reiterate my point that while Make in India is focusing on first removing the barriers and identifying our strengths and leveraging our strengths, it's going to be important going forward for us to go and invest in innovation to really go and realize the vision and convert it to reality. So from an innovation standpoint, what is innovation? So what I've done here is, most of you will agree that one of the key innovations that has happened in the last few years has been the iPhone. And what you'll see is a sampling of pictures here from a semiconductor chip to fiber optics, to the Palm Pilot, to iPods and iTunes, to Steve Jobs, to the Apple headquarters. What is all this, right? So I'm trying to come to a simple framework that we can use to essentially associate the work that we need to do, to associate the roles that all of us need to play in this coming era. So here is how I would define innovation, and here is what leads to the simple framework. Essentially, you define innovation as a significant positive change that gets created by synthesizing the right set of existing innovation. What that really means is that innovation comes from innovation. Ideas come from ideas. So for us to become big in innovation, we got to figure out how we're going to go and master this, create a framework that can allow us to go and build in this world. So here is a visual on, unfortunately it does not come out well, but the visual basically shows that humanity has progressed through these ages by building on top of the innovations that have happened in each phase. The Palm Pilot was a stepping stone to the iPhone. And you can go on and on about innovations that in one generation led to innovations in the subsequent generation. And the way we capture this in a simple framework is basically through a very simple equation that essentially shows that innovation is the synthesis of existing innovation. So to summarize, unfortunately that equation is not showing up well, but for the folks here who are classic engineers and math majors, it's basically the equation shows up as I equals a sigma of small I, which basically means that the way innovation happens in our society is you take the right set of existing innovations and you synthesize them into the next big innovation. And what's critical going forward is that not only do we go and address removing all the barriers and investing in, and of course leveraging the inherent strengths we have, but really focusing on this innovation framework. And the way this innovation framework works is basically it defines the roles that each one of us needs to play in this innovation era. It starts from the facilitators and the orchestrators. So this is basically, these are the people who provide the palette or who provide the environment that leads to innovation. So these are the guys who make this equation happen. It could be the space sector like ISRO is doing, it could be chemical, it could be semiconductors, but somebody needs to provide the governance and the orchestration, which is where the government policies come in terms of reducing the hurdles, in terms of attracting talent, creating an environment where contracts can be enforced, lands can be acquired, and talent can be attracted from overall the world. The other key thing that government needs to do in this area, and it's already happening, but it needs to be expanded, is creating the right think tanks, having the right strategic planners from a technology standpoint, from a business model standpoint, who will essentially provide the overall oversight and the coordination across multiple dimensions that we need to go and execute on. The next constituent is the custodians. The custodians are the ones who are essentially managing and maintaining existing innovation. These are the universities of the world. Previous speakers talked about the relationship between industry, academics, and government. Essentially, these are the custodians of IP. We need to focus on IP creation. We need to focus on IP protection so that we can maintain it, sustain it, and grow it. The most important of all, from an ecosystem standpoint, is the synthesizers. These are the people, as I go back to the iPhone example, a lot of these technologies were there, but it came to a key person in Steve Jobs to recognize the potential of bringing all these technologies together and creating the iPhone. The synthesizers are the ones who are really good at framing problems. That's the first step. You frame the problem right, you create the right guardrails, and you provide the intellect and vision and the observation to go and create the innovation. Finally, they're the creators. A vision is no good unless you can go and make it happen. These are the people who will actually take the innovation and convert it to real and build businesses. So with that, I want to say that we all are at a point in time where some of us may doubt how we're going to be successful and whether we're going to be successful to the extent that we want to be. The reality here is that it doesn't really matter where you start. What matters is you got to get started right away. So with that, I've come to the end of this keynote. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to request Mr. Raman, Managing Director, Avago, to please present Mr. Manish with a small token of our appreciation.